we're now going to talk about absolute value. An absolute value is defined as the distance from zero. How far away is a number from zero? And distance is always positive, so that's an important aspect of this. So let's look here at an example. So if we want to know what the absolute value of minus 3 is, and we graph it, we put a dot at minus 3, and we can count 1, 2, 3 units away from zero. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So this gives us two rules, and these rules are going to be really important to make sure you understand. The absolute value of a is equal to a if a is greater than or equal to 0, and the absolute value of a equals minus a if a is less than 0. So using this, we can come back to our absolute value of minus 3, and we look at the condition. This is a, and a is negative 3. So negative 3 is not bigger than 0, so I don't use this one. I use this one. This means it's minus a minus 3, which is equal to 3. So let's look at a couple of examples. Suppose that we're asked the absolute value of minus 7. Well, the absolute value of minus 7, since minus 7 is negative, it's minus a minus 7, which is 7. And you can jump straight to the 7, that's fine. Just remember that this minus is here for a reason. Okay, what about the absolute value of the square root of 2? Well, the square root of 2 is already positive, so this just comes out as the square root of 2. And I can do something interesting. If I put a minus on the outside of an absolute value, minus a minus 5, this is minus a minus minus 5, so this becomes a plus with one more negative, becomes negative 5. So if I want to force something to be negative, I just have to put a negative on the outside of the absolute values. Now, one more thing to keep in mind is that our absolute values have some properties. And these properties will always, always, always be true. So, for instance, the absolute value of a will always be greater than or equal to 0. It's also going to be absolutely true that the absolute value of a equals the absolute value of minus a. Whether I change the sign inside or not, it's going to be true. Now this one is a little bit trickier, but it's important to keep in mind. The absolute value of a times b is equal to the absolute value of a times the absolute value of b. This can be used, for instance, to make solving absolute value equations a little bit easier depending on the problem. Likewise, just like with multiplication, there's also a division rule where the absolute value of a divided by b is equal to the absolute value of a divided by the absolute value of b, so long as, of course, b is not 0. We also get that a minus b inside of absolute values is equal to b minus a. And we also know, related to this one up here, that a will always be less than or equal to the absolute value of a. And this last one, which is called the triangle inequality, says that if we have the absolute value of a plus b, that will always be less than the absolute value of a plus the absolute value of b. So if I take the absolute value separately, that will always be less than a plus b.